On Christmas Eve, as a blizzard tore through the pitch-black mountain range along the border, SEAL Team 6's desperate SOS signal echoed into silence. The base erupted in chaos, but every quick reaction force remained grounded by weather and enemy fire. When all hope seemed lost in the frozen night, a quiet voice emerged on a secondary channel. "I'll take the mission." No one could believe their ears. It was Raven, the legendary sniper who had vanished from the battlefield 3 years ago. Tonight, she would return from the shadows. The Northern Operations Base sprawled across the frozen landscape like a fortress of steel and ice. Inside the main barracks, strings of colored lights blinked weakly against concrete walls, a half-hearted attempt at holiday cheer. Soldiers huddled around laptops, their faces illuminated by video calls home. Children squealed through tinny speakers. Wives smiled through tears. The warmth of distant homes felt like another world entirely. Outside, the wind howled with increasing fury. Weather reports scrolled across command center monitors in urgent red text. Wind speeds approaching 60 miles per hour. Visibility dropping below 50 feet. Temperatures plummeting to -30 degrees. The Christmas blizzard was intensifying faster than predicted. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb stood at the operations center window, watching snow attack the reinforced glass in horizontal sheets. He'd served in the Arctic for 2 tours, but this storm made his instincts scream warnings. Something felt wrong about this night. In a barracks room stripped of all decoration, Captain Lena Hart sat motionless on a standard-issue cot. The woman once known throughout special operations as Raven had returned to the base for one purpose: to finalize her discharge papers. 3 years ago, she'd held the record for the longest confirmed kill at 2.4 kilometers a shot that had saved an entire platoon. 3 years ago, she'd been the most requested Overwatch specialist in theater. 3 years ago, her spotter had died in her arms. Lena was 32 now, though her eyes carried decades more. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight braid, her posture military perfect even in solitude. The only personal item visible was a worn photograph tucked into her pocket's edge she never let anyone see whose face it captured. She'd refused every mission offer since that day. Refused counseling. Refused contact with her old unit. The psychological evaluations all said the same thing. Severe PTSD, survivor's guilt, inability to reintegrate. They were probably right. She'd become a ghost haunting the edges of the military she'd once served without question. Tomorrow morning, she'd sign the final papers. Captain Lena Hart would cease to exist in any official capacity. Raven would be truly gone. The holiday sounds from other rooms, laughter, music, the synthetic warmth of forced celebration felt like noise from another dimension. Lena had no family to call, no traditions to maintain. Christmas had died for her. In the same moment, Staff Sergeant David Chen had stopped breathing, his blood steaming in the cold mountain air as she screamed for a medevac that arrived 3 minutes too late. She stood and walked to the window, watching the blizzard transform the world into a white void. Somewhere in that storm, she thought, someone was probably dying. Someone was probably alone. The world didn't stop killing people just because it was Christmas. Her hand moved unconsciously to the small radio clipped to her belt, an old habit she couldn't break. Even now, even discharged in all but paperwork, she kept it tuned to the frequencies only veteran snipers knew. The silent channels where the real communications happened, encrypted and forgotten by newer systems. The radio crackled with static. Just weather interference, she told herself. Just the storm playing tricks with electromagnetic waves. But Lena Hart hadn't survived a decade in special operations by ignoring her instincts. And her instincts were screaming that this Christmas Eve was about to shatter into something far darker than snow and wind. 90 miles northeast of the base, Lieutenant Jackson Price pressed his body against frozen rock and tried to control his breathing. Blood seeped through his tactical vest from a shrapnel wound he didn't have time to treat. Around him, what remained of SEAL Team 6 fought for survival in a nightmare that had erupted from the darkness without warning. The mission briefing had been straightforward. Extract a captured intelligence officer from a militant compound before enemy forces could execute him, or extract information about ongoing operations. Intelligence suggested minimal resistance, a dozen poorly trained guards at most. Quick insertion, precision extraction, home for Christmas breakfast. Intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. The compound had been a trap. The moment Team 6 breached the perimeter, Coordinated fire erupted from positions that shouldn't have existed. RPGs screamed through the night. Machine gun nests opened up from concealed bunkers. This wasn't a makeshift militant operation. This was a professional military ambush executed with precision and overwhelming force. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reeves had died in the first 30 seconds, his body torn apart by a burst of heavy-caliber rounds. Petty Officer Sarah Kim had been hit during the retreat, leaving a blood trail in the snow before Lieutenant Price managed to drag her to cover. 6 other team members bore wounds ranging from minor to critical. They'd fallen back to a narrow ravine, the only cover for miles, but it had become their prison. The enemy held the high ground on 3 sides. Thermal drones circled overhead like mechanical vultures. Every time someone moved, mortars churned the snow into explosive geysers. Lieutenant Price keyed his radio for the 8th time. Raptor Base, this is Shepherd 6 Actual. We are pinned down and taking heavy casualties. Request immediate air support and medevac. Over. Static hissed back at him. The enemy was jamming their primary frequencies with sophisticated electronic warfare equipment that shouldn't have been in theater. Price switched to the emergency backup channel. Any station. Any station. This is Shepherd 6. Actual broadcasting in the blind. We are surrounded. Multiple wounded. Running low on ammunition. Grid coordinates. A bullet struck inches from his head, showering him with rock fragments. He dove back into cover as renewed fire raked their position. Petty Officer Marcus Wright crawled over, his face pale beneath the grime and cold. LT. Sarah's not looking good. She's lost a lot of blood. We need that medevac now. Or, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Price tried the radio again, cycling through every frequency they had. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is SEAL Team 6. We are under sustained attack. Multiple casualties. Grid coordinates 73.4521 north, 162.8834 east. We need immediate. An explosion cut off his transmission. When the smoke cleared, their primary communications array was a twisted wreck of metal and melted components. Price pulled out his backup transmitter, a smaller unit with limited range and battery life. He set it to broadcast on continuous loop and pressed record. Any station monitoring this frequency. This is Lieutenant Jackson Price, SEAL Team 6. We are pinned down in a kill zone 90 miles northeast of Kodiak Base. Heavy casualties. Ammunition critical. Enemy force is numerically superior and well-equipped. Weather is preventing extraction. If anyone receives this message, his voice cracked slightly. Tell our families we didn't quit. He activated the loop and shoved the transmitter deep into a crack in the rock, hoping it might survive even if they didn't. Around him, his team prepared for what they all understood might be their last stand. They redistributed ammunition, checked weapons, said quiet prayers, or cursed with grim determination. Some pulled out photos. Others simply stared at the snow, faces carved from granite and exhaustion. Petty Officer 2nd Class Tyler Morgan, just 23 years old, wiped frost from his rifle scope. Merry Christmas, guys. Someone laughed, the sound harsh and desperate. Hell of a party. The mortars resumed, systematic and patient. The enemy wasn't rushing the assault. They were content to let the cold, the wounds, and the ammunition shortage do their work. By dawn, SEAL Team 6 would be corpses frozen in the snow, another classified failure buried in redacted reports. Lieutenant Price checked his watch. 2,347 hours on Christmas Eve. He wondered if anyone was even listening. The emergency alert screamed through Kodiak Base's operations center at 0015 hours Christmas morning. Commander Marcus Webb ran from the officer's quarters, still pulling on his jacket, his heart hammering against his ribs. The command center had transformed into controlled chaos. Officers barked into radios, analysts hunched over satellite imagery, and a massive screen displayed the last known position of SEAL Team 6, a small red dot in an ocean of hostile white. Report, Webb commanded. Major Patricia Sullivan turned from a communications console, her face drawn. Sir, we received a fragmented distress call from Shepherd 6 at 2,341 hours. Heavy contact, multiple casualties, position compromised. They attempted several transmissions before their primary comms went dark. We picked up one final loop message before. She swallowed hard. Before all contact ceased entirely. Webb stared at the map, his tactical mind racing through options even as his gut told him what he'd find. Weather status? Catastrophic, sir. The blizzard is a Category 4 Arctic storm. Winds sustained at 65 miles per hour with gusts to 90. Visibility 0. Temperature -35 and dropping. Every aircraft is grounded until further notice. Ground vehicles? Sir, in these conditions, any convoy would be blind and vulnerable. The roads are impassable. We'd be sending more people to die. Webb's jaw clenched. What about our QRF? The Quick Reaction Force was supposed to exist for exactly this scenario. Already mobilized and standing by, sir, but... Sullivan gestured helplessly at the weather displays. They can't deploy into this. We've lost 2 helicopters to weather in the past year. Command won't authorize flight operations until conditions improve. When will that be? Meteorology estimates 36 to 48 hours, sir. The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone in the room understood the math. SEAL Team 6 had minutes or hours, not days. Captain Brad Morrison slumped against a console, his face bloodless. Webb knew Morrison's younger brother was with Team 6 Petty Officer Kyle Morrison, 25 years old, 3 tours completed, planning to propose to his girlfriend when he got home. There has to be something, Morrison whispered. Some way to reach them. Webb wanted to lie, to offer hope, but he'd been a commander too long. We're doing everything we can within operational parameters. We have satellites tracking the area, signals intelligence working to break through the jamming, and every available asset preparing for the moment weather clears. They'll be dead by then. Morrison's voice was flat, hollow. No one contradicted him. Lieutenant Emma Torres, fresh from intelligence analysis school, spoke up tentatively. Sir, what about, is there any possibility of a solo infiltration? Someone with Arctic survival training who could... That's suicide, Sullivan cut her off. We'd just be adding another casualty to the count. But theoretically, there is no theory that survives those conditions, Lieutenant. This isn't a training exercise. That storm will kill anyone exposed to it within hours. Even our best cold weather specialists wouldn't survive the approach, much less execute a rescue under fire. Webb turned back to the map, his hands gripping the edge of the console until his knuckles whitened. Somewhere in that electronic representation of terrain, good people were dying. His people, and he was trapped in this warm, safe room, powerless. Continue monitoring all frequencies, he ordered, his voice rough. If they transmit anything, even a fragment, I want to know immediately. Get me updated satellite imagery every 15 minutes. And someone. He paused, the words like broken glass in his throat. Someone prepare casualty notification protocols. The room absorbed that order in heavy silence. Captain Morrison made a sound like a wounded animal and left the command center, probably to be violently sick somewhere private. Webb wanted to follow him, wanted to punch walls, scream at the universe, rail against the cruel mathematics of war and weather. Instead, he stood perfectly still, a commander without options, watching the storm swallow his people whole. On the main screen, the red dot representing SEAL Team 6 pulsed steadily, each flash a reminder of lives measured in heartbeats and ammunition counts. Outside, the blizzard roared like the laughter of indifferent gods. And in the barracks wing, Lena Hart sat bolt upright on her cot, her old radio crackling with a sound only she could hear. Lena's hand shot to the radio before conscious thought caught up with instinct. The frequency was one of the Ghost Channel's tertiary backup systems that newer encryption protocols had rendered obsolete. Most operators didn't even know they existed, but Lena had learned them from a generation of snipers who'd operated before satellite communications, when survival meant knowing every possible way to cry for help. Static washed through the small speaker, but underneath it, buried in white noise and interference, something else emerged. Not words, not even coherent signal. Just fragments of human desperation transmitted in the spaces between electronic chaos. Surrounded. Can't hold. Tell them we. The voice was male, young, breaking with exhaustion or pain. The transmission cut out, overwhelmed by jamming. But Lena had heard enough. She closed her eyes and visualized the base's tactical layout from memory. SEAL Team 6 had been on a classified operation. She'd seen the mission roster posted in the operations center, noticed the empty berths in their section. Northeast quadrant, probably near the border ranges where militant activity had been increasing. Her mind automatically calculated distances, weather patterns, approach vectors. The analytical part of her brain that never slept cataloged the pieces. Blizzard conditions would ground all aircraft, limit ground vehicle movement, reduce visibility to nothing. Standard rescue protocols would be impossible. But standard protocols weren't designed for Arctic snipers. Lena stood and moved to the window. The blizzard was a solid wall of white chaos, the kind of storm that killed within minutes of exposure. Any rational person would stay inside, stay safe, let the professionals handle it when conditions improved. But Lena Hart had stopped being rational the day she'd held David Chen's hand as he died, whispering promises she couldn't keep. She'd stopped trusting the professionals when she realized their policies and procedures sometimes meant watching good people die because the risk assessment said intervention was impractical. The radio crackled again. This time she caught 3 words, barely audible, anyone, here, please. Lena's jaw set. She knew that tone. That was the sound of someone broadcasting without hope of answer, leaving a final message for no one because doing anything was better than dying in silence. She checked her watch, 0023 hours. The command center would be in crisis mode, every available officer trying to solve an unsolvable problem. No one would be thinking about ghost frequencies or tertiary channels. No one would know that SEAL Team 6's final desperate transmissions were leaking through the electronic warfare, jamming on frequencies too old to bother blocking. No one except her. Lena opened her footlocker and pulled out equipment she'd told herself she'd never touch again. Her custom rifle case, reinforced for extreme cold. Her Arctic ghillie suit, white-on-white camouflage, designed to make a human invisible in snow. Her rangefinder, wind meter, cold weather optics. Tools of a trade she'd sworn to abandon. She assembled her kit with mechanical precision, each action triggering muscle memory 3 years dormant. Her hands moved without hesitation, strap the knife, secure the medical supplies, check the batteries on the thermal scope. David's voice echoed in her memory. Preparation is the difference between coming home and becoming a statistic. Raven. But David hadn't come home. All her preparation, all her skill, hadn't saved him. She paused, staring at the rifle case. What made her think she could save anyone now? She was broken, discharged, a ghost herself. The radio hissed again. Cold. So cold. Sarah, hold on, just... Lena picked up the rifle case. Her reflection in the window showed someone she barely recognized, hard edges, dead eyes, a woman made of ice and old anger. But beneath that, buried deep, something else flickered. Not hope, not redemption. Just the simple, stubborn refusal to let people die when she could do something about it. She shouldered her pack and walked toward the door. Her hand hesitated on the handle for just a moment. If she went through with this, there was no going back. The military didn't look kindly on unauthorized solo operations, even rescue attempts. She'd be court-martialed, probably imprisoned. Everything she'd sacrificed for her career would end in disgrace. The radio. Tell my brother. Tell Kyle. Lena opened the door and stepped into the corridor. Her boots made no sound on the floor. Years of training had made silence her native language. The operations center was 3 corridors away. Time to make an entrance that would either save lives or end her career. Possibly both. Lena entered the operations center without knocking. The heavy door swung open with enough force to draw every eye in the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. A dropped stylus clattered on the floor with surprising loudness. Commander Webb turned from the tactical display, his expression shifting from shock to confusion to something that might have been recognition. Captain Hart? What are you doing in... They're alive. Lena's voice cut through the room like a blade. She walked directly to the main display, ignoring protocol, ignoring the stunned officers around her. SEAL Team 6 is still transmitting. Tertiary backup frequency, heavily degraded. I intercepted fragments 17 minutes ago. Last transmission 4 minutes ago. Major Sullivan stepped forward. Captain, our communications specialists have been monitoring every 4, not these frequencies. Lena pulled her radio from her belt and set it on the console. The static hissed through the command center speakers. These are pre-2015 backup systems, obsolete channels. Your new equipment isn't even configured to receive them. Webb moved closer, his tactical mind already racing ahead. If you're hearing them, why aren't they hearing us? They might be, but their receiver is probably damaged, and the jamming is blocking everything except fragments on channels the enemy doesn't think to jam. They're broadcasting blind. Lena pulled up a frequency analysis on her tablet, displaying the waveforms. But they're alive, wounded, running out of ammunition, probably freezing but alive. The room absorbed this information in silence. Lieutenant Torres broke it first, then we need to. There's nothing we can do, Sullivan said, her voice weary. You heard the weather report. No aircraft, no ground convoy. Even if they're alive now, we can't reach them in time. Lena turned to face Webb directly. I can. The commander's eyes narrowed. Explain. Solo infiltration. Arctic Overwatch Specialist. I travel light, use the storm as cover instead of fighting it. Reach their position, provide precision fire support to break the siege, guide them to a defendable position, and wait for weather to clear. That's suicide. Sullivan wasn't arguing, just stating fact. No, Lena corrected. That's my specialty. I've operated in worse conditions in the Hindu Kush. I've survived 80-hour solo operations in terrain that killed half the teams that attempted it. I know how to move through conditions like this. More importantly, I know how to survive them. Webb studied her with the intensity of a man weighing lives against regulations. You've been out of active operations for 3 years. You're pending discharge. By your own admission, you're not fit for duty. I never said I wasn't fit. I said I didn't want to do this anymore. Lena's voice remained flat, emotionless. Those are different things. Captain Hart. Lena Webb's voice softened slightly. I know what happened in Pakistan. I know about Staff Sergeant Chen. No one questions your skill or your courage, but after that kind of trauma, they're dying right now while we discuss my mental health. Lena's eyes were cold. Every minute we waste is ammunition they don't have, blood they're losing, cold that's killing them. I'm not asking permission to process my trauma, Commander. I'm offering you the only option that gives them a chance. Captain Morrison pushed forward from the back of the room. She's right. My brother is out there. If there's even a possibility. There's no possibility, Sullivan insisted. Captain Hart, I respect what you're trying to do, but you're talking about solo movement through a Category 4 blizzard across 90 miles of hostile terrain to engage a numerically superior enemy force. Even if you survive the approach, even if you reach them, what then? You can't evacuate wounded SEALs by yourself. I don't need to evacuate them. Lena pulled up tactical maps on the main display, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. I need to break the siege. Enemy forces are maintaining overwatch positions here, here, and here. She marked the screen. Eliminate key positions, disrupt their command structure, force them to respond to a threat they can't see or quantify. Create chaos. Give Team 6 breathing room to reposition to defensible ground. Then we hold until extraction becomes viable. Webb crossed his arms. You're describing a fantasy scenario. I'm describing what I do, what I did for 10 years before. She paused almost imperceptibly. Before I stopped, the commander turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Kim, your assessment? A compact woman with sharp features stepped forward. Sir, if Captain Hart's skill set is as documented, she's theoretically capable of the approach and engagement. Arctic Sniper Doctrine emphasizes mobility, concealment, and long-range precision in adverse conditions. It's designed for exactly this type of scenario. Theoretically, Sullivan emphasized. In a textbook, not in reality. Reality, Lena said quietly, is that 8 people will die in the snow tonight if I don't go. Reality is that you have no other options unless physics suddenly changes and aircraft can fly through Category 4 blizzards. Reality is that I'm standing here offering you a chance, and you're debating it while they bleed out. The room fell silent, except for the muted sound of wind against reinforced walls. Webb stared at the tactical display, his face a mask of command decisions and impossible choices. Finally, he spoke. If I authorize this, and I'm not saying I am, what would you need? My equipment, which I already have, grid coordinates for their last known position, real-time satellite imagery when available, and a clear understanding that I'm operating under autonomous command. I won't check in on schedule, I won't follow standard protocols, and I won't abort unless I'm physically incapable of continuing. That's not how we operate. That's how I operate. It's why my success rate was 97%. It's also why I'm the only person in this room who can reach them." Morrison looked at Webb with desperate eyes. "Commander, please." Marcus Webb had commanded men in combat for 15 years. He'd made decisions that saved lives, and decisions that cost them. He understood the mathematics of acceptable losses and the brutal calculus of operational risk. But he also understood that sometimes the right choice wasn't the one that made sense on paper. He turned to Lena. "If you die out there, if I die out there, you tell anyone who asks that I went unauthorized and you tried to stop me. Court-martial my corpse if it makes the paperwork easier." She met his eyes without flinching. "But I won't die, and neither will they." Webb held her gaze for 5 long seconds. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. "You have authorization for autonomous operation. Call sign Raven. God help us all." Lena was already moving toward the door. "God won't help us, Commander, but physics, training, and a really good rifle might." She disappeared into the corridor, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Sullivan turned to Webb. "Sir, did we just send another person to die in that storm?" Webb stared at the tactical display, watching the red dot that represented SEAL Team 6 pulse like a failing heartbeat. "No, Major. We sent a ghost to hunt in the dark. Now we wait and see if legends are real." Outside, the blizzard screamed its answer to the night. Lena reached the vehicle depot at 0047 hours. The motor pool sergeant looked up from his desk, took one look at her full Arctic combat kit, and wisely asked no questions. She requisitioned an all-terrain vehicle with reinforced cold weather modifications, the kind designed for emergency operations in conditions that killed standard equipment. "Rough night for a drive, Captain," the sergeant observed, watching her load gear into the cargo area. "Rough night for a lot of things." She finished loading and climbed into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a deep mechanical growl that vibrated through frozen steel. The headlights carved weak tunnels through the snow, illuminating a world that had ceased to exist beyond 50 feet. Lena checked her GPS against the grid coordinates burned into her memory. 90 miles northeast. In good conditions, maybe 2 hours. In this storm, with failing visibility and terrain that could kill with one wrong turn, 4 to 6 hours just to reach the operational area, assuming the ATV didn't break down, she didn't drive off a cliff, and the storm didn't worsen. She shifted into gear and drove into the white void. The first hour was the easiest. The ATV's tracks gripped ice and snow with mechanical determination. Lena navigated by GPS and instinct, letting her training override the human impulse to turn back towards safety. The wind hammered the vehicle from every angle, making the steering wheel fight her grip. Snow accumulated on the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. She'd driven in bad weather before, but this was different. This wasn't just a storm, this was nature actively hostile to human existence, testing every vehicle system and human reflex. The temperature gauge showed -38 and dropping. Outside, the wind chill would kill exposed skin in under 3 minutes. 20 miles out, the terrain shifted from relatively flat approach to broken ground valleys, ravines, exposed rock formations that the blizzard concealed until she was almost on top of them. Lena slowed to a crawl, reading the land through curtains of snow, her spatial awareness heightened to combat levels. Her mind began to drift despite her focus. Old memories surfaced, unwanted but persistent. David Chen's voice. "You see that rock formation at 11 o'clock? That's where we set up. Perfect line of sight, good cover, easy fallback route." David's laugh when she'd outshot him at the range. "Show off. Next time I'm using your rifle." David's last words, whispered through blood and pain. "Tell my family. Tell them I was thinking of them." Lena gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. 3 years, and the memories were still sharp enough to draw blood. 3 years, and she still woke up most nights, seeing his face, hearing that final labored breathing, feeling the moment his hand went slack in hers. She'd been the best, everyone said so. Longest confirmed kill, highest success rate. The sniper other snipers wanted watching their backs. But all that skill hadn't saved her partner when a mortar round landed 3 feet away and peppered his body with shrapnel too small to armor against, too numerous to treat in time. The medevac had arrived 3 minutes later. 3 minutes. She'd held him and screamed for faster, screamed for someone to do something, screamed at a universe that let good people bleed out in the dirt while the radio promised help was coming. Just hold on, just 3 more minutes. 3 minutes might as well have been 3 years. Lena forced the memories down. Focus, present moment, 8 people dying right now, not 3 years ago. She couldn't change the past, she could only affect the present. At 45 miles, she abandoned the ATV. The terrain had become too broken for vehicle movement, and the storm had intensified to the point where driving was more dangerous than walking. She loaded her pack 70 pounds of equipment that felt like nothing after years of conditioning and began moving on foot. This was where her training truly manifested. Lena moved through the blizzard like smoke, through cracks, fluid, efficient, seemingly impossible. She read the wind, used snowdrifts for cover, navigated by feeling the shape of the land through her boots. Her breathing never quickened. Her pace never wavered. An observer, if any could have survived in these conditions, would have witnessed something extraordinary. A human being moving through an environment designed to kill humans, doing so with the confidence of someone walking through their own home. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just steady, relentless progress toward a destination fixed in her mind like a beacon. She'd done this before, in the mountains of Afghanistan, the forests of Russia, the deserts of Syria. Different terrain, same principles. The human body was incredibly fragile and simultaneously almost impossible to stop. It all depended on training, will, and the refusal to acknowledge that something was impossible simply because it was hard. At 65 miles, she paused in the lee of a rock formation and checked her equipment. Everything functional, core temperature stable, no frostbite yet, though her face felt like frozen meat. She ate a high-calorie bar that tasted like cardboard and chemicals, drank water from an insulated bottle, and kept moving. The memories tried to surface again. She pushed them down harder. At 70 miles, she heard gunfire distant, muffled by snow and wind, but unmistakable. Automatic weapons, the heavy thump of RPGs, and underneath it all, the lighter crack of American rifles. Still fighting, still alive. Lena increased her pace. The cold had stopped bothering her. She'd entered that zone where the body simply accepts suffering as the baseline and continues functioning anyway. Her breath formed ice crystals on her balaclava. Her fingers had gone numb inside reinforced gloves. None of it mattered. At 85 miles, she went to ground and moved to stealth approach. From here forward, enemy forces could be anywhere. She became one with the snow, her ghillie suit erasing her outline, her movements so slow and deliberate that even thermals would struggle to distinguish her from environmental noise. She pulled out her rifle, a custom .338 Lapua Magnum, modified for extreme cold operations. The weapon was an extension of her body, familiar as her own heartbeat. She checked the scope, adjusted for wind and temperature, and began her final approach. 5 miles out, she found her position. The wind howled around her. The snow tried to bury her. The cold gnawed at her bones. None of it mattered, because ahead, through the curtain of white chaos, SEAL Team 6 was dying. And Raven had finally come home. Lena settled into her position behind a rock outcropping that provided cover and elevation. She pulled out her spotting scope and surveyed the battlefield with the clinical detachment of a surgeon examining a patient. The tactical situation was worse than she'd imagined. SEAL Team 6 had taken shelter in a narrow ravine good for protection from direct fire, catastrophic for mobility. The enemy had established overlapping fields of fire from 3 elevated positions, 2 machine gun nests on ridgelines to the north and east, and a sniper position to the west. Below, approximately 30 to 40 hostiles maintained a loose perimeter, using the storm for cover as they advanced in calculated bounds. A mortar team was set up 800 meters southwest, lobbing shells into the ravine every few minutes, not enough to assault directly, just enough to keep the Americans pinned and terrified. Thermal drones circled overhead, their heat signatures bright against the cold sky, calling out movement to enemy forces. Lena watched the patterns, reading the battlefield like a book written in blood and geometry. The enemy commander was smart, patient, professional. This wasn't a rabble of militants, this was coordinated military action executed with precision. Someone had trained these people well. Through the scope, she could see SEAL team members huddled in whatever cover the ravine provided. She counted 6 moving figures, maybe 2 more sheltering deeper in. Movement was sluggish, suggesting wounds, exhaustion, cold. They returned fire sporadically, conserving ammunition. Even as she watched, one of the SEALs collapsed mid-movement. 2 others dragged him deeper into cover. Not killed, the movement was too controlled, but wounded badly enough to drop. Time was measured in minutes now, maybe hours. When the SEALs ran out of ammunition, the enemy would close for the kill. When they stopped moving, the cold would finish what bullets hadn't. The storm had become an executioner's tool. Lena began running calculations that existed somewhere between mathematics and instinct. Wind speed, 45 miles per hour with gusts to 60. Wind direction, northwest to southeast, variable. Temperature, -36, affecting ballistic performance. Humidity, 98% from snow saturation. Visibility, 50 to 100 feet for regular forces, maybe 300 for her scope's thermal capabilities. Range to primary targets, 800 to 1500 meters, depending on position. She checked her ammunition, 15 rounds in the magazine, 45 more in reserve. Against 40-plus enemies, it seemed laughable. But Lena wasn't trying to kill 40 people. She was trying to kill the right 5 or 6. A sniper didn't win battles through volume of fire. A sniper won by understanding that not all targets were created equal. Kill the machine gunners, the battle changed. Kill the forward observer directing mortars, the shelling stopped. Kill the commander, the organization fractured. 5 shots, 5 targets, 5 chances to turn a massacre into a fighting chance. Lena settled into firing position and became perfectly still. Her breathing slowed to 4 breaths per minute. Her heart rate dropped to 40 beats. The world narrowed to the scope reticle and the wind. In the ravine, a SEAL tried to move and was immediately suppressed by machine gun fire. Rock chips exploded around him. He dove back into cover, probably cursing, definitely terrified. Through her scope, Lena found the machine gunner a thermal outline clear against cold rock. Distance, 1,200 meters. Wind correction, 14 inches right. Bullet drop, compensated through scope adjustment. The target shifted position, settling behind his weapon for sustained fire. Lena exhaled slowly, her finger taking up slack on the trigger. The rifle was an extension of her intention. The bullet was inevitability made physical. The distance between thought and action collapsed to nothing. She fired. The suppressor reduced the rifle's signature to a muffled crack, swallowed instantly by howling wind. Lena was already working the bolt, chambering the next round, shifting to her secondary target. In the machine gun nest, the gunner jerked backward and went still. His assistant looked around in confusion, trying to understand why his partner had suddenly stopped firing. Understanding came 2 seconds too late. Lena's second round caught him in the chest. The machine gun went silent. In the ravine, the SEALs noticed immediately. Lieutenant Price keyed his radio. "Who the hell is out there? Someone just dropped 2 hostiles on the North Ridge." Lena didn't answer. She was already tracking her third target, the Western sniper. He'd noticed the machine gun nest going dark and was scanning for threats, his thermal scope sweeping the hillside. Professional, alert, dangerous. Distance, 1,400 meters. Extreme range even in good conditions. In this storm, with wind that could push a bullet 30 inches off target, it was nearly impossible. Lena made the impossible look routine. Her third shot traveled through screaming wind, through curtains of snow, across distance that would have made most snipers shake their heads and look for closer targets. The bullet found its target with mathematical precision. The enemy sniper collapsed across his rifle. Now the remaining enemy forces understood they were being hunted. They began shouting, gesturing toward the hillsides, firing blind into the storm. Panic crept into their movements. Lena found the forward observer, directing mortar fire, a man with a radio and binoculars, standing too exposed on a small rise. Distance, 900 meters. She adjusted for wind and fired her fourth shot. The observer dropped like his strings had been cut. The mortar fire ceased, the crew unwilling to shoot without guidance. For her fifth shot, Lena targeted the enemy commander, identifiable by the way others kept glancing his direction, by his position behind the lines, by the radio antenna marking him as someone important. Distance, 1,100 meters. The shot was complicated by movement, by cover, by the need to thread the bullet through a gap between rocks. Lena waited with infinite patience. The commander shifted position. The gap appeared. She fired. The man went down, and with him, The enemy's cohesion fractured. In 4 minutes, Lena had fired 5 shots across extreme distances in the worst conditions imaginable. 5 shots, 5 kills, and the entire tactical situation had transformed. The enemy forces, demoralized and leaderless, began falling back to defensive positions. The drones recalled. The pressure on SEAL Team 6 broke like a snapping cable. Lieutenant Price's voice crackled over the radio, stunned and disbelieving. Shepherd 6 to unknown friendly. If you can hear this, you just saved our lives. Who are you? Lena finally keyed her own radio, her voice carrying across the ghost frequency. Raven, I'm here to get you out. In the ravine, 8 exhausted, wounded, nearly broken SEALs heard that calm voice and felt something they'd thought was gone forever. Hope. Raven, this is Lieutenant Price, SEAL Team 6 actual. We have 6 ambulatory, 2 critically wounded, ammunition nearly depleted. What's your plan? Lena scanned the battlefield, her mind processing 100 variables simultaneously. The enemy had retreated but not fled. They'd simply recognized the threat and adjusted tactics. They'd be regrouping now, calling for reinforcements, planning a more cautious assault. She'd bought time, not victory. 200 meters northeast of your position is a cluster of rocks. Thermal shows them as cold spots, should provide better cover. Move there in 2 groups. I'll provide overwatch. When you're secure, we'll reassess. Raven, 2 of my people can walk. Then carry them. Movement starts in 90 seconds. Mark your route with IR strobes so I can track you. Anyone who breaks from cover gets suppressing fire from my position. You've got 1 chance at this, Lieutenant. Don't waste it. Price didn't argue. He understood that tone, the absolute certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Copy that. Preparing to move. Lena watched the ravine through her scope. After a moment, infrared strobes began blinking, invisible to the naked eye, clear as beacons through her optics. The SEALs were marking their path. First group moving in 60 seconds, Price transmitted. Negative, Lena countered. Drone at your 2 o'clock, 800 meters out. Give me 30 seconds. She tracked the thermal signature circling above the battlefield, calculating its flight pattern. The drone operator was being cautious now, keeping the aircraft high and mobile. Smart, but not smart enough. Lena led the moving target, compensating for speed and altitude. The shot was technically impossible. Hitting a small moving object at that distance, in these conditions, violated every probability calculation. She fired anyway. The drone tumbled from the sky and crashed into a snowbank. Drone neutralized. First group, move now. 4 SEALs burst from cover and sprinted across broken ground. Enemy fire erupted immediately, bullets churning snow and rock. Lena identified 3 firing positions and engaged systematically, not killing shots necessarily, but precise fire that forced enemy shooters to take cover. 3 rounds, 3 positions suppressed. The first group reached the rocks. Second group, stand by. Lena transmitted. She could see them preparing to move, 2 carrying a stretcher, 2 more providing support to wounded who could still walk. This would be harder, slower, more vulnerable. Lieutenant, you need to move faster than that. The stretcher is too slow. Petty Officer Kim can't survive rough handling. She won't survive at all if you don't get out of that ravine. Carry her fireman style, share the weight between 2 people, but move at combat speed or you're all dead. A pause. Then, copy. Adjusting. Lena spotted enemy forces repositioning for another assault. A machine gun team was setting up on a ridgeline she'd considered but dismissed as too exposed. Apparently, they were desperate enough to risk it. Distance, 1,500 meters. Just at the edge of her effective range, she adjusted for the extreme distance, breathed out slowly, and sent a round downrange. The assistant gunner collapsed. The primary gunner grabbed for the weapon, and Lena's second shot caught him mid-reach. The machine gun position went silent before it could fire a single round. Second group, move now while they're confused. The remaining SEALs burst from cover. Movement was ragged, 1 man stumbling under the weight of a wounded comrade, another limping badly, but still pushing forward. Enemy fire started tracking them, bullets walking a path that was getting closer with each burst. Lena shifted targets rapidly, firing, working the bolt, firing again. She wasn't trying for kill shots now, just suppression, forcing enemy heads down, disrupting aim. Her rifle became a metronome of precision violence. The second group dove into the rocks. Price transmitted immediately. All personnel accounted for. Raven, you just save it. Lena cut him off. This position is compromised. I'm relocating. Keep your heads down and treat your wounded. I'll be in touch. She was already breaking down her position, packing essential gear, preparing to move. A sniper who stayed in one location after firing that many rounds was a dead sniper. The enemy would be triangulating her position, calling in mortars, preparing to overwhelm her through volume of fire. Lena moved through the storm like smoke, relocating 400 meters to a new position that offered different angles and better escape routes. She settled in, checked her ammunition, 28 rounds remaining, and resumed overwatch. Through her scope, she watched the SEALs establish defensive positions. They were professionals, moving with purpose despite exhaustion and wounds. One man, probably a corpsman, was working on the critically injured, his movements economical and practiced. Another was redistributing ammunition, making sure everyone had at least a basic load. Lieutenant Price appeared to be doing a personnel check, touching each person, making sure they were functional. Good leadership. These men would follow him into hell. They might need to. Lena keyed her radio. Lieutenant, what's your ammunition status? Maybe 200 rounds total, mixed calibers. We're rationing every shot. Medical supplies? Running low. We've used most of our combat gauze and morphine. Kim needs blood transfusion that we can't provide. Morrison has a sucking chest wound that's getting worse. We've done what we can. But his voice trailed off. Time is your enemy now more than bullets. How long can they survive? Kim, maybe 6 hours. Morrison, 12 if we're lucky. Cold and blood loss are killing them. Lena did the math. Weather reports showed the storm lasting another 18 to 24 hours. Even if extraction became possible at the earliest opportunity, 2 of these SEALs would be dead. Unless she changed the equation. Lieutenant, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to create a diversion. When I do, you're going to move again 300 meters north to a cave system I'm seeing on thermal. It'll provide better shelter and more defensible positions. More importantly, it gets you out of this kill zone. Raven, we can barely move as it is. Another displacement is your only chance. The enemy is regrouping. They'll hit you with everything they have in the next hour, and in your current position, you can't hold. The caves narrow the approach, limit their numbers advantage, and give you cover from mortars. It's your best shot. Silence on the radio. Then, what kind of diversion? The loud kind. Be ready to move in 10 minutes. Lena began preparing for the most dangerous part of her plan. She'd broken the siege, bought them time, gotten them to better ground. Now, she needed to buy them survival. And that meant going from ghost to fury. Lena moved through the storm with lethal purpose. Her new position was closer to enemy lines within 600 meters of their forward positions. Close enough to see thermal signatures clearly. Close enough to make every shot count. Close enough that if they spotted her, she'd have seconds to escape. She settled behind a snow-covered ridge that provided minimal cover but excellent sightlines. This wasn't a position designed for survival. This was a position designed for maximum damage in minimum time. Through her scope, she counted approximately 25 enemy fighters visible in defensive positions. More would be further back, held in reserve or organizing the next assault. She couldn't kill them all, but she could scatter them. Lena checked her watch. 8 minutes until the SEALs needed to move. Time to make some noise. She began with the furthest targets, working her way closer, a strategy that would keep enemies guessing about her location. First shot, a figure standing too exposed on a rock, probably an officer giving orders. Distance, 800 meters. The man dropped without sound. Confusion rippled through enemy positions. They'd lost their sniper, lost their forward observer, and now someone was killing them from an impossible distance in impossible conditions. Panic was a weapon as effective as bullets. Second shot. Another leader, identifiable by the way soldiers clustered around him. Distance, 700 meters. He fell, and the soldiers scattered. Third shot. A machine gunner setting up for suppressive fire. Distance, 650 meters. The gun went silent before it could fire. Now, the enemy knew approximately where she was. Bullets began impacting near her position, kicking up snow and rock chips. Not accurate yet, but getting closer. Lena ignored the incoming fire with the calm of someone who'd been shot at thousands of times and understood the difference between concerning and critical. Fourth shot, a soldier with an RPG launcher. Distance, 600 meters. The launcher tumbled from nerveless fingers. Fifth, sixth, seventh shots. Rapid precision fire at targets of opportunity. Each round found flesh. Each impact created more chaos. The enemy line fractured. Soldiers abandoned positions, seeking cover from an invisible threat. Their return fire became frantic, undisciplined, spraying bullets at shadows, wasting ammunition on ghosts. Lena keyed her radio. "Lieutenant, diversion is active. Move your people now. You have approximately 3 minutes before they regroup." "Copy. Raven. We're moving." Through her scope, Lena watched the SEALs burst from their position and begin the desperate sprint toward the cave system. They moved in a tight formation, the wounded supported between stronger members, everyone pushing through pain and exhaustion. Enemy forces spotted the movement. Someone shouted, guns swung toward the running Americans. Lena engaged with mechanical efficiency. Target, fire, bolt, target, fire, bolt. Each shot forced enemy shooters to take cover instead of firing. Each second she bought was another meter the SEALs gained. But she was running out of ammunition. 15 rounds remaining, then 10, then 5, and the enemy was finally organizing a response. She could see them flanking her position, moving in coordinated bounds. Professionals again, not panicked militia. They'd figured out approximately where she was, and they were closing in with the patience of hunters who knew their prey was trapped. Lena took her final shots, 4 rounds at the closest threats, buying the SEALs their last few seconds of cover. Then she broke position and ran. Bullets chased her through the snow. She heard the whip-crack of rounds passing inches away, felt the impact vibrations through the ground as heavier weapons tracked her movement. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. The 70-pound pack felt like it weighed 1,000. She didn't care. Pain was just information. Death was just mathematics. Right now, the math said she could reach cover before the bullets reached her. She dove behind a snow-covered boulder as automatic weapons fire shredded the air where she'd been standing. Rounds sparked off rock. Snow exploded in white fountains. The world became noise and chaos. Lena pressed against the boulder, breathing hard, checking her rifle. 1 round chambered, 0 in reserve. Against 20-plus enemy fighters now converging on her position. The mathematics had shifted decidedly against her. She pulled her sidearm a .45 caliber handgun with 2 spare magazines, 30 rounds total. Better than nothing, still not enough. Movement to her left. She snapped the rifle up and fired her last round. A figure dropped. Then the rifle was empty, useless weight. She let it fall and drew the pistol. 3 soldiers appeared from the storm, weapons raised. Lena fired 3 times, precise double taps that dropped 2 and wounded the 3rd. She was moving before they hit the ground, using the storm for cover, seeking any advantage in terrain and chaos. More soldiers appeared. She fired, conserving ammunition, making every shot a kill shot or a suppression shot. The pistol bucked in her hand, brass ejected into snow, men screamed and fell, but there were too many. For every one she dropped, 2 more appeared. They were surrounding her, cutting off escape routes, forcing her into an ever-tightening noose. Lena's last magazine clicked home. 15 rounds between her and death. She could see at least 10 enemy fighters closing in, shadows moving through the blizzard, weapons tracking for her thermal signature. She'd accomplished the mission. The SEALs were in the caves, defensible, with time to survive until extraction. Her job was done. But she wasn't quite ready to die yet. Lena pulled a thermite grenade from her vest, her last one, saved for equipment destruction if captured. She didn't plan on being captured, but the grenade could serve another purpose. She threw it into the air toward the densest cluster of thermal signatures. The explosion was brilliant white, magnesium burning at 3,000 degrees, creating a bloom of heat and light that overwhelmed thermals and night vision. Enemy soldiers screamed and scattered, blinded and burned. Lena ran through the chaos, using the confusion to break the encirclement. Bullets followed her, but without accuracy. She was a ghost again, vanishing into the storm, leaving only bodies and questions behind. She ran until her lungs couldn't pull air, until her legs gave out. until the voices of pursuers faded into wind and distance. Then she collapsed into a snowdrift and lay perfectly still, letting the blizzard bury her in white silence. Her radio crackled. "Raven, this is Lieutenant Price. We're secure in the caves. Heavy casualties but stable for now. What's your status?" Lena keyed the transmit button with fingers that could barely feel the cold anymore. "Alive, relocated, maintaining overwatch from distance." "You sound hurt." "Functional." She wasn't sure that was true, but admitting otherwise served no purpose. "Enemy is scattered but will regroup. Estimate 2 to 3 hours before they attempt another assault. Use that time to fortify positions and treat wounded. I'll monitor approaches and provide early warning." "Raven, thank you. You saved us." "Thank me when we're all home, Lieutenant. Until then, we're still in the fight." She clicked off the radio and closed her eyes. The cold had moved beyond pain into a strange warmth that she knew was dangerous. Her body was shutting down, conserving resources, preparing for the long battle against hypothermia and exhaustion. David Chen's voice echoed in her mind one more time. "You can't save everyone, Lena. Sometimes all you can do is make the last stand worth something." She'd saved 8 tonight. It would have to be enough. The storm continued its assault, but Lena Hart, the woman who'd once been Raven, had already learned that the worst storms weren't made of snow and wind. They were made of memory and loss and the impossible weight of surviving when others didn't. But she'd survived this long. She could survive a little longer. At least until dawn. The storm broke at 0534 hours, as if even nature recognized the significance of Christmas morning. The wind that had screamed for 12 hours fell to whispers. The snow that had erased the world began to thin. And through the breaking clouds, the first light of dawn touched the mountains with gold. In the cave system, Lieutenant Jackson Price watched 8 of the most exhausted people he'd ever seen slowly register that they were still alive. Petty Officer Kim had survived the night, kept breathing through sheer stubborn will and the constant attention of their corpsman. Morrison's chest wound had stabilized. The rest of the team bore the marks of combat, blood, exhaustion, cold, but they were breathing, moving, alive. "Lieutenant," one of them said, voice rough, "I can hear helicopters." They emerged from the caves into a world transformed. The battlefield from the night before looked different in daylight, cleaner somehow, the violence buried under fresh snow, the bodies of the fallen reduced to shapes under white blankets. The enemy forces had withdrawn during the night, unwilling to face daylight and the inevitability of American air support. 3 Black Hawk helicopters appeared on the horizon, their rotors carving paths through clearing air. The cavalry had finally arrived, 12 hours too late, but still welcome. Price keyed his radio. "Raven, extraction is inbound. What's your location? We're not leaving without you." Silence answered him. He tried again. "Raven, respond. That's an order." Static hissed through the speaker. Then, faintly, "Leave me. Mission complete. Get your people home." "Like hell. Give me your coordinates." "Negative. I'm compromised. Hypothermia. Can't move. Don't risk the extraction for..." Price cut her off. "Sergeant Williams, get a fix on that transmission. Everyone else, gear up. We're not leaving anyone behind." The helicopters touched down, disgorging medical personnel and fresh troops. Commander Webb emerged from the lead bird, his face showing the strain of a night spent waiting for news that might never come. "Lieutenant Price, report." "Sir, all personnel accounted for but one. The sniper who saved us is still out there. She's hypothermic and unable to move. We need to." "Already on it," Webb said. "We've been tracking her radio signature. 2 of my best Arctic rescue specialists are en route to her position now." 30 minutes later, they found her. Lena Hart lay in a depression in the snow, her body temperature dangerously low, her lips blue, her hands frozen around her empty pistol. But her eyes tracked movement when they approached, and she managed a weak smile. "Took you long enough," she whispered. They wrapped her in thermal blankets, started IV fluids, loaded her onto a stretcher. As they carried her toward the helicopter, the SEAL team formed up in 2 lines, a corridor of honor. Every man who could stand did so, coming to attention as she passed. Lieutenant Price stepped forward and saluted. "Thank you, Captain, for everything." Lena tried to return the salute, but couldn't lift her arm. "Just doing my job." "Your job ended 3 years ago. You came back anyway. That's not duty, that's heroism." They loaded her into the helicopter beside Petty Officer Kim and Morrison, the wounded and the rescuer, flying home together through the dawn. Back at Kodiak Base, the entire command staff waited on the tarmac. When the helicopters touched down, medical teams rushed forward. Lena was semi-conscious, hypothermic, suffering from exhaustion and minor frostbite, but alive. As they wheeled her stretcher toward the medical facility, she grabbed Commander Webb's sleeve. "The discharge papers are void," Webb said firmly. "You're not discharged, Captain. You're on medical leave pending full recovery, after which we're going to have a long conversation about reinstatement." "I can't. I'm not ready to. You went into a Category 4 blizzard to save 8 men you didn't know, engaged 40+ hostiles alone, and survived 12 hours in conditions that would have killed anyone else. You're the most ready person I've ever met. The question is whether we're ready for you." Lena closed her eyes. "I still see him, David, every time I close my eyes." "Then don't close them," Webb said quietly. "Stay awake. Stay in the fight. Honor his memory by being the person he believed you were." They wheeled her into the warm building, into medical care and rest and the slow process of recovery. But before she lost consciousness entirely, Lena heard one more sound. The SEAL team in the corridor, standing at attention, their voices joining in something that sounded almost like a prayer of gratitude. 3 days later, fully recovered from hypothermia and cleared by medical, Lena stood in the operations center. Commander Webb handed her a folder. Official commendation from JSOC, Silver Star for Valor, and a formal request from SEAL Team 6 asking specifically for you as their Overwatch specialist on future operations. Lena stared at the papers. "I thought I was done with this life." "Maybe you were. Maybe you still are. But last Christmas Eve, you proved something important. You can't outrun who you are. You're a protector, Lena. A guardian. And the world still needs guardians." She looked out the window at the mountains where she'd almost died. Somewhere out there, David Chen's memory still lived not in pain and loss, but in the 8 lives she'd saved, in the mission she'd completed, in the person she'd refused to stop being, even when it would have been easier to quit. "If I come back," she said quietly, "I'd do it my way. No oversight. No second guessing. I work alone or not at all." "Agreed, with one condition. You take a new call sign. Raven is a good name, but it's time for something that reflects who you've become." "Which is?" Webb smiled. "How about Phoenix? Dies in fire, rises from ashes, seems appropriate." Lena thought about it. About death and resurrection. About the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. About the long road from Pakistan to this moment. From loss to purpose, from ending to beginning. "Phoenix," she repeated. "I can work with that." Outside, the Christmas lights still blinked against the Arctic darkness. Inside, a legend prepared to return to the shadows. And in 8 homes across America, families celebrated a miracle they would never fully understand, the miracle of sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, coming home because one woman refused to let silence be the final answer. The SEAL team's SOS had gone unanswered, until a master sniper broke the silence from the dark. And in doing so, found her own way back to the light.